Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for October 9th through 15th. This week I read 2 books, I watched a plethora of Food Network shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 1 book. First this week is a nonfiction book that took me a little while to get through, and that's In Defense of Witches. This was originally published in French and has been translated into English recently. Going into this book not knowing anything but the title, you might assume that this is a history about witches and where that concept came from and that type of thing. It does have some of that information in it, but what this really is talking about different classes of women who are still persecuted under the guise of what witches represented back when people thought there were witches and started executing them. Side note, anytime I'm reading, watching, or listening to anything that talks about how they want to know the history of the witches and is this where the witches got executed and stuff like that, I just side-eye so hard because those people who were killed for being witches were not witches, so can we stop calling them that? There are also so many places that have killed witches and not apologized for it, and it makes me angry. Side rant over, this book takes a feminist look at certain types of women that we have currently who are persecuted for certain attributes, such as women who are independent because women who are widows or who are celibate and don't want to take a partner are looked down upon, both back then and now. You definitely get some questions. This also talks about women who choose to remain childless and the whole background of that with witches. They don't have children, they must hate children, and therefore they want to eat children, and all of that line of thinking, and how you can't be a real woman unless you want to have babies, which is just garbage. Because as much as society would like to reduce women to their fertility and be like, that is your only one job, that's just not accurate. And then this also talks about elderly women and how we think of women with gray hair as being old hags and where all of those stereotypes came from. This is an interesting read, but it is rather academic, so that's why it took me a little longer to get through because I was interested, but the language of it is just a little different than I'm used to reading on a daily basis. I'm pretty sure that most women will fall into one or more of these categories throughout her lifetime because obviously it can shift, especially the independent one. So I found a lot of this relatable. The other book I picked up this week is a book I picked up for my 40 Before 40 challenge, where I picked 40 books that I'm going to read before my 40th birthday. If you want to know more about that, I will link that TBR down below. This book was originally recommended to me by my friend Paige back in 2018 for a BookTubers Pick My TBR list, and that book is Warm Bodies. To this point, I had never read it, I had never seen the movie, and if somebody told me it was a loose retelling of Romeo and Juliet, I definitely forgot that information because I got 127 pages into this book and went, what the hell is this balcony scene? Why is she quoting Shakespeare? Oh god, his name is R, her name is Julie. Oh, so many things are clicking into place. The main character of this book is a zombie named R. Through his eyes we see how it feels like to be a zombie in this world, how they can't read, how they can only say a few words at a time. They do have a rich internal life, but it's hard to communicate that, and obviously they need to feed on flesh and brains to survive. As it turns out, when they eat the brains, they sometimes get the memories of their victims, and this happens in particular very strongly with this one person who had, until that point, been dating this girl named Julie. So R got a lot of his memories and then kind of fell for Julie, which is pretty quick considering he just got married a couple of days ago. He then decides he's going to keep Julie safe, but how exactly can he do that? Because if he takes her back to his place, all of his buddies are going to want to eat her, and if they hang out at her place, all her friends are going to want to kill him. One part of this I very much enjoyed, which was before I realized this was a Romeo and Juliet retelling, is this did actually seem like 2 households both alike in dignity, because you can see both sides of their society and how they are very much the same. There's obviously some key differences, but they're both just training their children to survive the situation they're currently living in, and other parallels, and I found that pretty clever. As I was going into this, people on Instagram were telling me, oh, this is such a great love story, and I wonder about that. Like, this is a love story, and if you're basing something off Romeo and Juliet, it's probably not going to be the greatest love story, although West Side Story is a pretty great love story, so it's hard to think about it. But with the imbalances in these 2 people, like, one of them is, I believe, in her late teens. The other one, he doesn't know what age he was when he died because he doesn't have those memories, but he looks like he's probably in his early 30s, maybe late 20s. Also, one of them has a beating heart and one doesn't. There's some power power imbalances here that make me kind of squicked out about calling this a relationship. Also, there's a large history of tales in which the man is a literal monster and the woman falls in love with him anyway, and I can't think of any tales where it's reversed. So there's that. There probably are some, and if there are, please tell me about them down below. But with that history, that kind of just squicks me out a little bit. Not saying I didn't enjoy this, I'm just saying that aspect of it just makes me go, really? On to what I watched this week. Mostly it was just a plethora of random spooky Halloween shows on the Food Network, as well as a couple of other of their shows that I hadn't seen before that weren't specifically the spooky ones. We watched some of the pumpkin carving shows, we watched some of the holiday baking ones where they're like making cookies that have to be a banner and stuff like that. We also watched some Restaurant Impossible, also Cheat Day USA, which is a show that I'd never seen before, but has the same host as Restaurant Impossible, so I was like, that's interesting. I didn't realize he had more than one show, and Chad was like, wait, why is he on both of these shows? And I'm like, if you watch the Food Network long enough, you know that basically everybody has more than one show. Guy has several shows, Bobby Flay has several shows, I'm pretty sure that that woman named Ree has more than one show, like, and they keep popping up on each other's shows as well. So yeah, it didn't shock me that Robert had another show because I'm used to seeing people have more than one show on this network. On to the movies we watched, which we both watched last night after having a good night's sleep in our own beds, which was just so lovely. Because we did have a very lovely 3-week trip up and back to the Northwest Territories, and if you want to see some images from that, go over to my Instagram, because I have 4 different saved stories because I have more than 300 photos from the trip, and basically you can kind of vicariously come along with us on this road trip. So those are titled NWT Trip, and then NWT Trip 2, 3, and 4. They'll be out of chronological order because obviously I stopped updating the first one when I started doing the second one, and Instagram always updates the stories features for the most recent one you added to, so they're out of order chronologically, but you can figure it out. I have faith in you. In any case, last night Chad and I watched a couple of movies, the first one being Hellraiser, the original 1987 flick, and the story of this one just makes you want to punch people because basically nobody is good in this except for possibly the daughter. She's kind of okay, and then the guy that she has a thing for, I believe his name is Steve, he's fine except for the cigarette trick was weird and gross and I did not like it, and I don't know why I turned her on so much. Anyway, the thing about this movie that we really enjoyed was the special effects, because it was fun to kind of watch and see how they did some of these things, because it was really fun to watch and try to figure out how they did some of the gory special effects that these days would have probably been done with things like CGI and that type of stuff. They had to do it in different interesting ways. We think that a couple of parts definitely were stop motion. There were other things where they might have been heating it off camera and that caused it to melt, and then they would do that in reverse to make it look like it was building up organs and stuff like that. Like, it was interesting to watch, and I'd actually be really interested to look into the history of how this was made, because some of the cinematography aspects of it were really cool. I could have done without the storyline of the guy that just rocks up and sleeps with his brother's new wife and then goes off and gets this box, and then that box takes him to hell, and then he comes back out of hell, and then he needs her help killing people so he can get organs and skin and that type of stuff. Gross, whatever. These are not good people. It was fine though. Last night we also watched Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which is a brand new Stephen King movie based on a short story that he wrote, and it has one of the kids from the new It movies, which is cool. It also has Donald Sutherland as Mr. Harrigan, and I loved seeing that because that man has been doing movies as long as my father has been alive. Yes, I looked it up last night, and yes, now I have a bunch of movies I want to watch just because Donald Sutherland is in them. In this movie we have this kid named Craig who gets a job just reading books to this elderly billionaire 3 times a week. He's been doing this for many, many years, and they form a very, very close relationship, to the point when Craig falls into some money because of a scratch ticket given to him by his employer, and he gets these like 4 times a year. He decides that since he recently got the first iPhone, he actually wants to use some of that money to give one to Mr. Harrigan so they can kind of bond over this, and he can kind of show him the internet and show them how phones work and all of that type of stuff. However, he comes to regret this decision when he starts getting messages from Mr. Harrigan when he should not be getting messages from Mr. Harrigan, and some supernatural things happen, and it goes from there. Although I'm not going to wreck exactly what happens for you, it is pretty easy to figure it out yourself. We figured it out as we were going, but that's because we're used to this genre and the whole magical things happening and what magic or unexplained phenomena are likely going to do in a movie like this. So I enjoyed it. I can understand the people that say that this was kind of slow, but I feel like it was kind of meant to be this story of this quiet relationship. Describing this movie, I kind of want to call it a quiet horror film because It's not something that's big and loud and gaudy about it. Some sad or horrific things do happen, but it's not just like blood spray everywhere type of horror. It's more to do with grief and how we go through life and how that our perspective changes over time. So I would very much call this a soft horror. Like, if you don't like horror movies, you'll probably actually be able to get through this one just fine. So if you're looking for something more hardcore in your horror, you're probably going to find this one a little slow or boring, but overall it's fine. It didn't have any major flaws for me. The book that we listened to this week is another book that Chad and I listened to in the car while we were driving, and that's Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. I had never actually read any of the Guards books before. Up until this point, I had only read 3 of the Witches books, so this is quite a jump around in the series for me because this is number 29 in the series, and I don't know exactly where it fits in the Guards books, but I'm pretty sure it's not the first one. I didn't know anything going into this book besides it was set in Discworld, and it was going to be one of the books concerning the Guards of Discworld. And this one did some interesting things that obviously I didn't see coming because I knew literally nothing going into it, but it also ran a little bit long for me, which is a little bit sad because I did enjoy listening to it, but there were also so many characters that I just kind of didn't care about a few different side plots. Essentially, this starts out with a guy who's pretty high up in the Guards, and it's a certain day where they remember a battle that happened many, many years ago when he was just new to the Force. And as soon as I say Force, I have that quote from Hot Fuzz talking about how we call it the Service instead of the Force in my head, but that's a whole different thing. Essentially, there's a big revolution, a battle. This guy that he really idealized died during that riot, something that he and his fellow guards who were there commemorate every year. Somehow right in the middle of this, he's now on pursuit of this criminal who has killed a couple of people, and he tries to go capture him, and wibbly-wobbly magic things happened, and they end up back in the past around the time of that revolution, and all of a sudden everyone thinks that he is that person that he looked up to all those years ago. It's some fun time travel-y nonsense that kind of feels like a cop movie but in medieval-ish feeling times, with some magic thrown in and the usual amount of Terry Pratchett tongue-in-cheek humor, which I very much enjoyed. I can't say too much more about this book, not because I didn't enjoy the experience, but because we did have a lot of really long driving days, and I do feel there are certain chunks of this book that I definitely fell asleep during, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I was in the car and I just had to get some more sleep, because sometimes when you're on road trips you don't sleep the best. And if you're not the one driving, it can be all too easy to just shut your eyes just for a couple of seconds and then wake up and not really know what's going on in the book. It is a personal goal of mine to eventually read all of the Discworld books, but I don't have a set plan as to when to do that and in what order, because there are so many different ways you could do it. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. If you have an opinion as to how I should go about tackling the Discworld series eventually, please let me know that down below as well. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!